Mister, this is my final reflection video on colonial society and culture. So I basically made a lot of connection between each sources, the five sources, and the APUSH course description for period 2. So European empires had different goals. For example, the Dutch, as Simon Meadow explains, hoped to further their profit through trade. For example, this quote says, Netherlands, like other early American colonies, was a state-sponsored venture the aim of which was to realize a profit and serve the emerging Dutch state. End quote. And the Dutch relied on alliances and fur trades rather than mass migration, unlike the English. This shows in 2.11b the French and Dutch colonies depended on trade and overall diplomacy with native people, which basically contradicts the English focus on agriculture and overall land. And the rivalry for resources basically shaped every colony's development and also fueled conflict with both the Native Americans and other Europeans. So from Sebastian Brandt Jamestown letter, I saw that how precious the metals were in order for survival in a way. He wrote, quote, "My brother and my wife are dead. About a year past, I was not able to travel up and down the hills and dales, but do now intend every day to walk and down the hills for minerals," end quote. And this quote shows their obsession with minerals and how early keep focus on wealth extraction. But this was also promised to trade and develop, quote, tobacco, beaver, and other skins, end quote, which basically shows the shift towards tobacco and fur, the beginning of Virginia plantation economy, which directly tied to 2.12a on tobacco and overall indentured labor. So, on the other hand, New England's emphasized community and religious mission, with Trump described a thriving colony of 4,000 settlers, for example, and this quote kind of shows it. Quote, "Our civil government is mixed. The freemen choose the minecrest every year. Our churches are governed by pastors, teachers, ruling elders, and deacons. Yet the power lies in the whole congregation," end quote. And this basically reflects 2.12b, which is small towns, family farms, and self-governing congregations, which also connect to this line that I found very interesting from the source, which said, "The natives are near all dead of the smallpox, so the Lord had cleared our title." End quote. And this shows how diseases and providential thinking shape relations overall with the native people, and this kind of connects to 2.13c. Okay, so then I read about Francis J. Bremer on Roger Williams and Anne Hutchison. So even with Puritan New England, boundaries of belief were very constant. And Bremer explains that Williams, instead of the colony authorities were violating God's wishes. This is a quote. And then this basically led to his banishment and the founding of Rhode Island. And similar to him, Anne Hutchison, she claimed it was directly inspired by the spirit challenging ministers. And I think that both these cases are similar in a way that they both connect to 2.13d, conflicts between leaders and colonists over authority, and they basically highlight how religion shaped not only unity but also a lot of distance. Then there is Then there is John Peter Zinger's New York Weekly Journal from 1735, and by the 1730s, the colonies were part of the transatlantic print culture, and he published an essay that argued, quote, "Learning and knowledge are perfections in us, not as we are men, but as we are reasonable creatures," end quote. And this Enlightenment idea reflects 2.21a, the exchange of European ideas like natural rights and rationalism, which transformed colonial society, and it was basically like done as an early argument for greater inclusion, for example, the education of women. And also, these sources show how like different colonies shaped according to their imperial goals, environment, and overall like their cultural differences and debate. For example, the Dutch traders had their own like intention of trade, while there was also tobacco planters, for example, in the Virginia colonies, and Puritan convents to religious distant and Enlightenment calls for equality. So the colonies were never like uniform. They were all different in order to meet their own goals. And I think this connects to 2.1, the variety of colonization competition for resources, and 2.2, the exchange with Britain and Europe that shaped colonial culture. And yeah,